What happens when one of the most respected journalists in America sits down with royalty, only to watch the entire interview crumble into chaos? In just 35 seconds, a single comment would turn a prestigious primetime interview into the most shocking ejection in television history. This is the story of how Prince Harry got kicked off 60 Minutes. Anderson Cooper had seen it all. Decades of hard-hitting journalism, interviews with presidents, dictators, celebrities, and everyone in between. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold in Studio 57. The stage was set perfectly. 2 chairs, soft lighting, the iconic ticking stopwatch logo hovering in the background. Anderson sat with his notes, calm and composed as always. He'd spent weeks preparing for this conversation. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, had agreed to his first major American interview in months, and the entire world was watching. Harry walked onto the set with that familiar stride, confident, maybe a little too confident. He shook Anderson's hand, smiled for the cameras, and settled into his chair. The audience had no idea they were about to witness television history. Anderson started gently. He always did. "Your Royal Highness, thank you for joining us tonight." Harry waved his hand dismissively. "Please, just Harry. I've told you people a million times. I don't use the titles anymore." Anderson nodded, professional as ever. "Of course. Harry, you've been living in California for several years now. How has that transition been for you and your family?" "It's been liberating, Anderson. Truly liberating. You know, in England, I was suffocating. Every single day, someone telling me what to do, where to go, what to wear. Here, I can finally breathe." "That must have been incredibly difficult," Anderson said, his voice measured and empathetic. "Can you tell us about the specific moments that led to your decision to step back?" Harry leaned forward in his chair. "Where do I even start? The press, obviously. They're vultures, every single one of them. But it wasn't just them. It was the institution, the palace. They didn't protect me. They didn't protect my wife. They fed us to the wolves." Anderson listened carefully, his expression neutral. "When you say they didn't protect you, can you elaborate on what you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said, Anderson. They chose to protect other people over us. They leaked stories. They briefed against us. And when we asked for help, they turned their backs." "Those are serious allegations," Anderson replied calmly. "Do you have specific examples you can share with our viewers?" Harry's jaw tightened. "I've shared examples before. I wrote an entire book about it. I've done interviews about it. How many times do I need to explain myself?" The temperature in the room shifted. Anderson maintained his composure. "I understand you've spoken about this before, but our audience at 60 Minutes may not have heard your perspective. I'm simply asking you to help us understand." "Right, because nobody's heard my story," Harry said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It's not like I've been on every major platform talking about this for years." Anderson paused. He was trained for moments like this. Stay calm. Stay professional. Move forward. "Let's talk about your relationship with your brother. You've mentioned in the past that things between you and Prince William have been strained. Is there any hope for reconciliation?" Harry laughed. Not a warm laugh, a bitter one. "Reconciliation? With William? That ship has sailed, Anderson. He made his choice. He chose them over me. He chose the institution over his own brother. That must be painful for you." "Of course it's painful. But I've moved on. I have my own family now. I have people who actually care about me." Anderson shifted in his seat slightly. "You mentioned your wife. Meghan has also been very vocal about her experiences. How do you both support each other through the ongoing public scrutiny?" Harry's eyes narrowed. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're focusing on the scrutiny. Why aren't you asking about the racism? Why aren't you asking about the death threats? Why is it always about how we're handling it, and never about the people who are actually doing this to us? Those are absolutely valid questions, and I'd be happy to discuss them, Anderson said evenly. But I want to make sure we cover all aspects of your experience. Can you tell us about specific instances of racism that you and Megan faced? I've talked about this, Anderson. I've talked about it extensively. The comments about our son's skin color. The way the British tabloids talked about Megan compared to how they talked about Kate. It's all documented. It's all out there. Anderson nodded. I understand. For our viewers who may want to learn more, can you walk us through what happened? Harry threw his hands up. What is this? An interrogation? I came here thinking this was going to be a respectful conversation, not an attack. I assure you, this is not an attack, Anderson said, his voice steady. These are standard journalistic questions. I'm simply trying to understand your perspective. Standard questions, Harry repeated. Standard questions are what got my mother killed, Anderson. Did you know that? The paparazzi, the press, the constant harassment, they chased her into that tunnel. They killed her. And now they're doing the same thing to my wife. Anderson took a measured breath. I understand that the loss of your mother was traumatic, and I don't want to diminish that in any way. But are you saying that the current media coverage of you and Meghan is comparable to what happened to Princess Diana? I'm saying the parallels are obvious, Harry shot back. History is repeating itself, and nobody seems to care. I think a lot of people care deeply about your well-being, Anderson replied. But I also think there's a difference between legitimate journalism and invasive paparazzi behavior. Can you distinguish between the two? Harry stared at him. Are you serious right now? You're defending the press? I'm not defending anyone. I'm a journalist myself, and I'm trying to understand where you draw the line between fair coverage and harassment. The line? Harry's voice rose. The line is when they make up stories about my family. The line is when they publish lies. The line is when they invade our privacy. That's the line, Anderson. And when you do public interviews like this one, do you see that as inviting public interest in your life? Harry's face flushed red. Wow. Victim blaming. Fantastic. This is exactly why we left. Anderson remained calm. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm asking about the relationship between public figures who share their stories publicly and the media attention that follows. You know what, Anderson? I thought you were different. I thought you were one of the good ones. But you're just like the rest of them. I'm simply doing my job, which is to ask thoughtful questions. Thoughtful? Harry laughed again, sharp and cold. You want thoughtful? Let me be thoughtful. You sit here in your fancy studio, making millions of dollars a year, and you have the audacity to question my trauma? To question my pain? Anderson's expression didn't change. I'm not questioning your pain. I'm asking you to help our audience understand your experience. My experience? My experience is that everyone wants a piece of me. Everyone wants the story, the exclusive, the drama. But nobody actually cares about the human being sitting in front of them. I respectfully disagree, Anderson said quietly. I think many people care very deeply. Harry leaned forward, his finger pointed at Anderson. Don't tell me what people care about. You don't know what it's like. You've never had to deal with what I've dealt with. Anderson paused. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle but firm. Actually, I lost my father when I was 10 years old, and my brother died by suicide when I was 21. So I do understand loss and grief, even if our circumstances are different. The studio fell silent. Harry blinked, momentarily thrown off, but instead of softening, he doubled down. That's completely different, Anderson. Your family wasn't hunted by the media. Your family wasn't destroyed by an institution. You're right, our experiences are different. But pain is pain, and I'm trying to have a genuine conversation with you about yours. No, you're trying to make me look bad, Harry said, his voice rising again. You're trying to twist my words and make me into the villain, just like everyone else. Anderson shook his head slowly. I'm not trying to do anything except have an honest dialogue. But if you feel uncomfortable, we can take a break. I don't need a break, Harry snapped. I need you to stop treating me like I'm some kind of spoiled brat who doesn't know what he's talking about. I have never said or implied that. You don't have to say it, Anderson. It's in your tone. It's in your questions. It's in the way you're looking at me right now. Anderson took a deep breath. I'm looking at you with respect and professionalism. The same way I look at every guest who sits in that chair. Respect. Harry's voice cracked with anger. You want to talk about respect? How about the fact that you didn't even stand up when I walked in here? How about the fact that you're calling me by my first name, like we're old friends? You specifically asked me to call you Harry at the beginning of this interview. I was being polite. Obviously, I expected some decorum. And some acknowledgement of who I am. Anderson's eyebrows raised slightly. Who you are? Yes, Anderson. Who I am. I'm a prince. I'm royalty. And whether I use my title or not, that deserves a certain level of respect. I've shown you nothing but respect since you sat down. No, you haven't, Harry insisted. You've interrogated me. You've challenged me. You've made me feel like I'm on trial. I've asked you questions. That's what journalists do. Harry stood up suddenly. His microphone pack nearly pulled him back down, but he yanked at the wire. You know what? I'm done. I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected on national television. Anderson remained seated, his hands folded calmly in his lap. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I haven't disrespected you. Yes, you have, Harry shouted. From the moment I sat down, you've been condescending. You've been dismissive. You think you're so much better than me because you're the big famous journalist, and I'm just the prince who ran away. I have never thought or said anything of the sort. You don't have to say it. Harry was fully standing now, his face red, his hands gesturing wildly. It's obvious. You think I'm entitled. You think I'm privileged. You think I don't have real problems. Anderson finally stood, his 6-foot frame matching Harry's. His voice remained calm. I think you're a human being who has experienced real trauma and real pain. I also think you agreed to come on this program to share your story, and I'm trying to give you that platform. Platform? Harry's voice reached a new pitch. You call this a platform? This is a hit job, but you're trying to destroy me, just like everyone else. Harry, I need you to take a breath and calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, Harry yelled. You don't get to tell me what to do. Nobody gets to tell me what to do anymore. That's the whole point. Anderson's jaw tightened slightly. It was the first crack in his professional armor. I understand that you're upset, but you need to lower your voice. I'll use whatever voice I want. This is my interview. Actually, Anderson said, his tone still controlled, but with an edge of steel. This is my program, and if you cannot conduct yourself appropriately, we're going to have to end this conversation. Harry's eyes went wide. Are you threatening me? I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. Unbelievable, Harry muttered. He turned to the camera, addressing it directly. Do you see this, everyone? Do you see how I'm being treated? This is exactly what I've been talking about. The disrespect. Harry, Anderson interrupted firmly. Turn around and speak to me, not the camera. Harry spun back around. Why? So you can edit this however you want? So you can make me look crazy? We're live, Anderson said simply. That seemed to register with Harry for a moment. His eyes darted to the crew, to the cameras, back to Anderson. We're live right now? Yes, this is 60 Minutes. We're broadcasting live to millions of viewers. Harry's face went through several emotions at once. Shock, anger, embarrassment. Then, somehow, more anger. You didn't tell me this was live. Your team was informed weeks ago. It was in the contract you signed. I don't read contracts, Harry shouted. That's what people are for. Anderson blinked. You have people who read your contracts? Of course I do. I'm not going to read through pages and pages of legal nonsense. So you didn't know the terms of your own interview agreement? That's not the point, Anderson. I think it might be exactly the point. Harry's finger shot out again, pointing directly at Anderson's chest. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've got me all figured out. Anderson took a small step back. I need you to lower your hand. Or what? Harry challenged. What are you going to do? Anderson's voice dropped, quiet, but absolute. I'm going to ask you to leave. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Harry froze. What did you just say? I said I'm going to ask you to leave. This interview is over. Harry's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You can't kick me off. I'm Prince Harry. And I'm Anderson Cooper, and this is my program. You've been hostile, you've been aggressive, and you've created an environment that is no longer conducive to productive conversation. I'm asking you, respectfully, to leave the set. This is insane. Harry looked around desperately at the crew, as if they might come to his rescue. Nobody moved. You're all just going to let him do this? Anderson raised his hand, and instantly, 2 production assistants appeared from off-camera. Please escort our guest out. Don't touch me. Harry jerked away from them. Don't you dare touch me. Nobody's going to touch you, Anderson said calmly. But you do need to leave. Now. Harry's chest was heaving. His face was the color of a tomato. You're going to regret this, Anderson. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Do you have any idea what I can do? Anderson's expression didn't change. I'm dealing with someone who agreed to an interview and then became verbally aggressive when asked basic questions. That's who I'm dealing with. I'll sue you, Harry threatened. I'll sue this entire network. I'll sue everyone in this building. That's your prerogative. But right now, you need to leave. Harry stood there, trembling with rage. For a moment, it looked like he might charge at Anderson. The production assistants tensed. The entire studio held its breath. Then Harry ripped off his microphone, the wire snapping as he threw it on the ground. You haven't heard the last of this. Perhaps not, Anderson replied. But I have heard the last of it tonight. Harry turned on his heel and stormed toward the exit. He stopped at the door, spinning around one final time. You're a disgrace to journalism, Anderson Cooper. A disgrace. Anderson stood perfectly still, his hands clasped in front of him. He didn't respond. He simply watched as Harry disappeared through the door, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the hallway. The studio remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Then Anderson turned back to the camera. His face was composed, professional, calm. You would never know he'd just been shouted at on live television. We apologize for what you just witnessed, he said, his voice steady. Here at 60 Minutes, we believe in respectful discourse and thoughtful conversation. When those standards cannot be maintained, we have a responsibility to our viewers to end the segment. We'll be back after this break. The camera cut to commercial, but in that studio, everyone stood frozen. The crew members looked at each other in disbelief. Some had their mouths hanging open. Others were already pulling out their phones, knowing that what they'd just witnessed would be on every news site in the world within minutes. Anderson walked back to his chair and sat down. He picked up his water glass and took a long sip. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. If he was shaken by what had just happened, he didn't show it. The executive producer rushed over. Anderson, are you okay? Anderson nodded. I'm fine, David. Let's prep the next segment. Are you sure? We can push everything back. We can fill the time with something else. No, Anderson said firmly. We're going to continue with the show exactly as planned. We're not going to let that derail us. David hesitated, then nodded. Okay, you've got 5 minutes until we're back live. Anderson spent those 5 minutes reviewing his notes for the next segment as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just ejected a member of the British royal family from his program, as if millions of people weren't currently losing their minds on social media. When the cameras came back on, Anderson transitioned smoothly into the next story. His voice was calm. His demeanor was professional. He gave no indication of the chaos that had just unfolded, because that's what real journalists do. They don't chase drama. They don't feed the chaos. They pursue truth. They ask hard questions, and when someone cannot handle being asked those questions, they hold their ground. In that moment, Anderson Cooper reminded everyone why he was one of the most respected names in journalism. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to fight. He simply maintained his standards and refused to compromise them for anyone. Not for celebrities. Not for politicians. Not even for princes. The interview that was supposed to rehabilitate Harry's image did the exact opposite. Every news outlet on the planet covered the story. The footage went viral instantly. People couldn't believe what they'd seen. A member of the royal family throwing a tantrum on live television, pointing fingers, making threats, storming off set like a child who didn't get his way. And through it all, Anderson Cooper stood firm, calm, professional, unshakable. He asked reasonable questions. He maintained respectful boundaries. And when those boundaries were violated, he did what any person with integrity would do. He ended the conversation. That's the difference between someone who has earned their position through decades of hard work and someone who was born into privilege. One understands that respect is earned through behavior. The other believes respect is owed because of a title. Anderson Cooper didn't need a crown to command respect. He had something more powerful. He had credibility. He had professionalism. He had integrity. And on that night, in front of millions of viewers, he proved exactly why those things matter more than any title ever could. What Harry failed to understand is that agreeing to an interview means agreeing to answer questions. Hard questions. Uncomfortable questions. Questions that might challenge your narrative or force you to explain your perspective more clearly. That's not disrespect. That's journalism. Anderson wasn't there to be Harry's friend. He wasn't there to give him a platform to complain without pushback. He was there to do his job, which is to seek truth and provide context for viewers. When Harry called it a hit job, what he really meant was that it wasn't the softball conversation he'd expected. He wanted someone to nod along and agree with everything he said. He wanted validation, not investigation. But that's not what 60 Minutes is about. It's not what Anderson Cooper is about. And when Harry realized he wasn't going to get the easy interview he wanted, he couldn't handle it. So he lashed out. He made it personal. He claimed victim status while simultaneously pulling rank. He wanted to be treated as a regular person one moment and as royalty the next, depending on what suited his argument. Anderson saw through it immediately, and rather than engage with the theatrics, he simply removed himself and Harry from the situation. It was a masterclass in maintaining composure under pressure. Anderson never raised his voice. He never lost his temper. He never stooped to Harry's level. He simply stated facts, set boundaries, and enforced consequences when those boundaries were crossed. That's leadership. That's professionalism. That's what decades of experience looks like when tested under the bright lights of live television. The entire incident lasted less than 20 minutes from start to finish. 20 minutes that will be studied in journalism schools for years to come. 20 minutes that showed the world exactly who Prince Harry is when things don't go his way. And 20 minutes that proved, beyond any doubt, that Anderson Cooper is exactly who we've always thought he was. A consummate professional, a skilled interviewer, a journalist who refuses to compromise his integrity for anyone. In the end, Harry stormed off into the night, leaving behind nothing but broken microphone equipment and a shattered reputation. Anderson stayed right where he belonged, in that chair, under those lights, doing the job he's done brilliantly for decades. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. One man demanding respect he hadn't earned. Another man earning respect with every calm, measured word. One man using his title as a shield and a sword. Another man letting his work speak for itself. One man crumbling under basic questioning. Another man standing firm in the face of aggression. This wasn't just a failed interview. It was a revelation. A moment where the carefully constructed public image collided with reality, and reality won decisively. Anderson Cooper didn't destroy Prince Harry that night. Prince Harry destroyed himself. All Anderson did was ask questions and maintain professional standards. Sometimes that's all it takes to reveal someone's true character. Put them in a situation where they can't control the narrative. Ask them to explain themselves clearly. Hold them to the same standard you'd hold anyone else. And watch what happens. In Harry's case, what happened was a complete meltdown. A public display of entitlement, aggression, and inability to handle even the mildest challenge to his worldview. Anderson Cooper gave Prince Harry every opportunity to have a meaningful conversation. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened to the answers. He followed up respectfully. He did everything a good interviewer should do. Harry's response was to accuse him of running a hit job, to question his integrity, to make threats, and ultimately to storm off set rather than engage in actual dialogue. That tells you everything you need to know about both men. One came prepared to have a conversation. The other came expecting a coronation. The crown might be part of Harry's birthright, but respect, that has to be earned. And on this night, in this moment, with millions of people watching, Prince Harry proved he hasn't learned that lesson yet. Meanwhile, Anderson Cooper proved, once again, why he's one of the most trusted journalists in the world. Not because he's famous, not because he's been on television for decades, but because when it matters most, when the pressure is highest, when someone is screaming in his face on live television, he remains exactly who he's always been. Calm, professional, unshakable, true. That's the story of how Prince Harry got kicked off 60 Minutes. Not because of bias, not because of a setup, but because he couldn't handle being treated like every other guest who sits in that chair. He couldn't handle basic questions. He couldn't handle accountability. And when Anderson Cooper refused to lower his standards to accommodate that, Harry revealed exactly who he is underneath all the carefully managed public relations. The world watched, the world saw, and the world will remember.